Let me tell you something I've learned over a long life. You see, when you live long enough, you start to notice patterns. Not the big loud ones that slap you in the face. No, I'm talking about the quiet ones. The ones that whisper. The ones most people miss because they're too busy or too scared to look closely. And one of the most humbling things I've learned is how to recognize when an elderly person may be in their final year. It's not about giving up hope. It's about being present. It's about giving them the dignity and peace they deserve. Most people wait until things get obvious. By then, it's too late to say the things that matter or to be there the way someone needs you to be. That's why I want to share 5 subtle signs. Not to scare you. Not to sadden you. But to help you show up in time. First, let's talk about withdrawal. Not the dramatic kind where someone locks themselves in a room or refuses to talk. I mean the quiet kind. The kind where someone who once loved Sunday dinners at the table now prefers to eat alone. Or when a parent who used to light up when the grandkids visited suddenly seems distant. They may still smile, still nod, but there's a weight in their eyes. It's like they're slowly stepping away from the world. Not out of anger or depression, but like someone putting down their tools after a long day. You'll notice they start to talk less about tomorrow and more about the past. They'll reminisce more. They'll bring up names you've never heard. It's not just nostalgia. It's their way of settling their story. They're sorting memories, trying to make peace with the life they've lived. And if you're paying attention, that's your cue to lean in, not back. Listen. Ask questions. Give them space to share what matters most to them. Because sometimes, that's all they want at that stage. To feel heard. To feel seen. Then there's the change in sleep patterns. This one's tricky because older folks naturally sleep less or nap more. But what I'm talking about is different. It's when someone starts sleeping more during the day and doesn't seem to feel rested. It's when they seem more tired, even when they're not doing much. Their body is slowing down. It's like a lantern running low on oil. The flame flickers more often. They may doze off mid-conversation or seem confused when they wake. This isn't laziness or boredom. It's the body signaling it's tired in a way that rest can't fix. And it's not something a doctor can always measure. You'll notice it if you sit quietly beside them. You'll notice it when they stop watching their favorite shows or lose track of time. That's when you step in. You don't need to fix it. You just need to be there. Maybe hold their hand. Maybe rub their back like they used to do for you when you were small. It's those little acts of love that matter most then. Now let me tell you about another sign. It's physical but often brushed aside. Sudden weight loss or loss of appetite. Not dieting. Not a stomach bug. I mean when someone who used to enjoy a good meal suddenly loses interest in food altogether. It might start small. They'll say, "I'm not that hungry." They'll push food around their plate. Then they'll start skipping meals. You might think it's just a phase or old age, but no. The body knows when the end is near. It begins to shut down what it doesn't need. Digestion takes energy. When the body is preparing to rest for good, it starts conserving. Even their favorite dishes won't tempt them. And here's the thing. Don't force it. Don't beg them to eat. Instead, offer small things. A few sips of broth. A little pudding. More importantly, sit with them while they eat, even if they only take 2 bites. It's not about the food. It's about the company. It's about making them feel like they're not doing this alone. You also want to watch for subtle changes in their breathing. Again, not the dramatic gasps. It starts small. You might notice they're breathing a bit slower. Or that their breaths are shallow. Sometimes, it sounds like a soft sigh, repeated over and over. You'll see it especially at night. Sometimes there's a pattern where they stop breathing for a few seconds and then take a deep breath like they've just surfaced from water. It can be unsettling if you don't know what it is. It's called Cheyne-Stokes breathing. And it often shows up in the final stretch. But don't panic. Don't flood the room with worry. Just be calm. Be there. Talk softly. Play their favorite music. Create an atmosphere where they feel safe. Where they feel loved. Because by then, they're not afraid of what's coming. They're afraid of going alone. And your presence, your calm, can be the most powerful medicine. And finally, there's something I've seen too many people miss. It's when someone starts to see or talk to people who aren't there. Now, some might rush to label it confusion or hallucination. But in my experience, it's something more. I've seen it in my mother. My uncle. My oldest friend. They'd smile and say things like, "Do you see her?" or "He was just here." And the way they said it, it wasn't scared. It was peaceful. Familiar. Almost comforting. They might mention relatives long past. Or say they dreamed of someone calling their name. You don't have to believe in the afterlife to understand what's happening. Their mind is shifting. Their soul is reaching. And whether it's memory or mystery, I don't question it anymore. I just nod. I just smile. I tell them, it's okay. You're not alone. Because I believe part of them is already starting to walk between two worlds. And the most we can do is keep them company for as long as they need. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this a bit too much? Should I really look for these signs? Yes. Yes, you should. Not because you can change the outcome, but because you can change the experience. You can give someone the gift of not having to pretend. Of not having to be strong for everyone else. Of not having to go through the final stretch feeling like a burden. We all say we want to be there for our loved ones. This is what it really means. Not just showing up at the hospital, but noticing the shift. Sitting in the quiet. Listening to the same story for the 10th time. Offering a hand when no words are left. The truth is, these signs are not just warnings. They're invitations. Invitations to show love in its truest form. Quiet. Patient. Present. So if you notice your elderly parent or grandparent or neighbor showing these signs, don't rush. Don't panic. Just lean in. Be the warm presence in the room. Be the calm in their storm. Because one day, you'll look back and realize those moments, those simple, silent moments, were the most important ones of all. And you'll be glad you didn't miss them. Now, let's clear some common questions. How do we create space for open, gentle conversations about the end of life without causing more fear or sadness? Let me tell you something straight from the heart, because I've lived long enough to know that the hardest conversations are the ones that matter the most. Talking about the end of life is not easy. It never has been and it never will be. People get scared. They tighten up. They avoid the subject like it's some kind of curse. But I've learned that avoiding it doesn't make it go away. It just leaves the people we love in the dark. And when someone is nearing the end of their journey, the last thing they need is more darkness. What they need is light. Gentle light. The kind that comes from honesty wrapped in love. So the question is, how do we create space for those kinds of conversations without making things heavier than they already are? That, my friend, takes a tender hand and a brave heart. It starts with listening, not talking. That may sound strange, especially since the question is about starting a conversation. But trust me. Before any words come out of your mouth, you've got to be still enough to hear what's already being said without words. Watch their eyes. Listen to the silences. Pay attention to what they talk about and what they avoid. Sometimes an elderly person doesn't need you to bring up the topic. Sometimes they're already opening that door, little by little, with their stories, their sighs, their quiet moments. I remember sitting with my mother on the porch in her last year. She started talking about the roses she used to grow with my father. She hadn't brought him up in years. That was her way of looking back. Her way of settling unfinished feelings. I didn't push. I just sat with her, nodding, asking small questions. And slowly, she started talking about what she was afraid of. What she hoped for. what she didn't want to be a burden about. That porch became sacred ground for us. And it never would have happened if I barged in with big questions or a serious tone. You've got to ease into it like a boat drifting gently into harbor. Next, you've got to let go of the idea that you're in control of the conversation. You're not. You're there to hold space, not to direct traffic. It's not about having the right words. It's about creating the right feeling. You don't sit someone down and say, "Let's talk about death." That's too heavy. Too cold. What you do is create moments of safety. That means making sure they feel love no matter what. That they don't have to pretend for your sake. That they can cry, laugh, forget things, say things out of order, or even say nothing at all. I've seen it again and again. When people feel safe, the truth begins to rise on its own. Sometimes it comes out as a question. What do you think happens when we go? Sometimes it's a fear. I don't want to be hooked up to machines. And sometimes it's just a statement with tears behind it. I'm tired. That's your moment. That's when you lean in and say something soft. Something true. I'm here. You don't have to carry it alone. Whatever you want to talk about, I'll listen. That's how the door opens. Not with force, but with presence. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they have to come up with answers. They don't. You're not there to solve death. You're there to witness it with love. That means letting the person speak without jumping in with advice or trying to make everything positive. I've heard people say, "Don't talk like that, you'll be fine." And I know it comes from a good place. But it shuts the door. It says, "I can't handle what you're feeling." And let me tell you, when someone is facing the end, they can sense that kind of discomfort a mile away. What they need is someone who can sit in the fire with them and not look away. Who can say, "I don't know what to say, but I'm right here with you." That honesty is powerful. It's medicine. Now let's talk about timing. There's no perfect moment to have these conversations. But there are better times than others. You don't bring it up when someone's in pain or surrounded by chaos. You look for quiet moments. Maybe it's during a slow walk. Maybe it's while folding laundry together or sipping tea. The best talks I've had about life and death came in the most ordinary moments. Because in those quiet pockets, people let their guard down. They're not performing. They're just being. And when someone is just being, that's when the truth has room to rise. Also, don't underestimate the power of storytelling. Sometimes, instead of asking direct questions, you can share a story. Maybe about someone you loved who passed. Maybe about a moment when you were scared. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. When you show that you've faced your own fears or that you've thought about these things too, it gives permission. It lets the other person know that they're not strange or weak for feeling the way they do. They're human. And they're not alone. Now I'd be lying if I said these conversations don't stir up emotion. They do. Sometimes there are tears. Sometimes there's silence. Sometimes you'll both feel the weight of it. But fear and sadness don't have to be the end of the road. They can be bridges. They can bring you closer than you've ever been. I've sat with people who never said "I love you" until those final conversations. I've heard apologies, confessions, blessings. And I've watched families fall apart because they waited too long and never said the things that mattered. So don't wait for the perfect words. Just speak from the heart. Be gentle. Be real. And above all, remember this. These conversations aren't about death. They're about love. They're about honoring a life that mattered. They're about showing someone that they are not invisible. That their thoughts, fears, wishes, and stories still matter. Even now. Especially now. If you can be that presence for someone, if you can give them the gift of truth wrapped in gentleness, then you've done something holy. You've turned a painful topic into a sacred moment. And I can't think of a better way to say goodbye than that. So don't be afraid to step into that space. Do it with humility. With courage. with tenderness. Because in the end, it's not the perfect conversation that matters. It's the open heart behind it. That's what they'll remember. That's what you'll carry. What lessons can we learn about love, presence, and letting go by truly being there for someone during their final stretch of life? Let me tell you something that only time can teach. When you've walked alongside someone through the final stretch of their life, you start to see things differently. The world slows down. What used to matter starts to fade. And what you once overlooked suddenly becomes sacred. I've been there more times than I ever thought I would. I've held hands that were growing cold. I've listened to last words spoken in a whisper. I've watched breaths slow to silence. And through it all, I've learned lessons that no book, no sermon, no fancy education could ever give. These lessons are carved deep into the heart, shaped by love, presence, and the courage to let go. And I want to share them with you, not as some wise man on a mountain, but as someone who has sat beside many beds and felt the weight and the beauty of those final days. The first thing you really learn, is what love actually means. Not the kind of love that shouts from the rooftops or writes grand poems. No, I'm talking about the quiet kind. The kind that shows up. The kind that wipes a forehead or holds a cup of water to trembling lips. The kind that listens without needing to fix. In those last moments, love becomes something pure and stripped down. It's not about the right words. It's not about saying everything perfectly. It's about being there. Just being there. I remember sitting with my brother in his final weeks. We didn't talk much near the end. We had already said what needed saying years before. But I sat beside him every day, reading old letters, playing his favorite music. One afternoon he looked at me and said, "You don't have to stay, you know." I just smiled and said, "I know." That was love. Not leaving. Even when there's nothing left to do. Even when it's hard. Love in the final stretch is not about trying to hold on. It's about giving someone the gift of not having to walk that path alone. Then you learn the real meaning of presence. In our daily lives, we think being present means showing up physically. But when someone is close to the end, presence becomes something much deeper. It means being fully there. Not thinking about your to-do list. Not checking your phone when they fall asleep. It means noticing the rise and fall of their chest. Noticing the change in their voice. Catching the way they look at you a little longer than usual. Presence is being in the room not just with your body, but with your soul. I remember sitting with my grandmother. She was drifting in and out of sleep, barely talking. At one point she opened her eyes and whispered, "You're still here." It wasn't a question. It was a statement full of peace. Full of gratitude. That's what presence does. It calms. It heals. It tells someone, you matter. Every breath you take matters. I'm not going anywhere. But let me tell you, the hardest lesson of all is learning how to let go. We are wired to hold on. To fight. To fix. Especially when it's someone we love. But there comes a time when the kindest thing you can do is to stop holding so tightly. Not because you're giving up, but because you love them enough to let them rest. I've seen people linger in pain because no one gave them permission to go. Everyone around them kept saying, "Stay strong. Don't give up." And I've seen the peace that comes when someone finally says, "It's okay. You can go. We'll be all right." Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you love them so much that you're willing to let them move on without guilt or fear. It's the most painful love there is. But also the most beautiful. There's something else I've come to believe through all of this. Being with someone at the end changes how you see your own life. It wakes you up. Suddenly the things that seemed urgent, career, arguments, appearances, they all shrink in size. And the things you took for granted, shared meals, quiet talks, holding hands, become priceless. You start living differently. You hug longer. You listen better. You forgive more. You learn to say "I love you" without needing a reason. Because you've seen what really matters when time runs out. You've seen how precious one more day, one more hour, can be. That kind of awareness doesn't leave you. It stays. It shapes you. And it's not just what you learn about them. It's what you learn about yourself. Sitting with someone in their final days tests your strength. It brings up your own fears, your regrets, your unfinished business. But if you're brave enough to stay present, something sacred happens. You become softer, more open, more human. You start to understand that being there for someone else in their hardest hour is not just about them. It's about who you become in the process. You learn patience. You learn how to listen with your whole heart. You learn that silence can speak louder than any words. And you learn that sometimes the greatest thing you can do is simply sit quietly beside someone and let them know they're not alone. I've cried in hospital rooms. I've laughed through tears remembering old jokes with someone who only had days left. I've watched the strongest people I know ask for help with the smallest things. And through all of it, I've seen the grace that comes when love shows up and stays, even when the road gets hard. That's the kind of love that changes lives. That's the kind of love that carries on even after the last breath is taken. So if you ever find yourself beside someone nearing the end, don't be afraid. Don't worry about saying the right thing. Just be there. Love them with all the quiet strength you have. Let them talk. Let them be silent. Let them laugh. Let them cry. And when the time comes, let them go with your blessing. That, my friend, is one of the deepest acts of love a person can offer. And it will stay with you forever, shaping the way you live, the way you love, and the way you show up in this world. Because once you've truly been there for someone in their final stretch, you'll never take a single moment for granted again. If you liked today's discussion, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel, so until next time, take care.